Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Mature Audiences Mayhem. My name is Glenn King, and it is my distinct honor to bring you this podcast where we talk about the things that other podcasts either will not or cannot talk about. That is, things that are intended for mature audiences only. And a few weeks ago, I told you on the podcast that we were going to be branching out this year and talking to some people that go beyond the world of adult entertainment. And we brought you, of course, the great Chris Jericho. And I said we were going to be talking to some authors, some musicians, some entertainers of all kinds. Today we're going back to the world of wrestling for one of the most brilliant minds in the history of the business, one of the most important power players in the business today. You know him, according to his Wikipedia, as the Jackal, Cyrus the Virus, the General, the Natural, Sidewinder Singh?
Yeah, under a mask.
And today you see him on Impact Pro Wrestling, which is a lot of fun to watch. He is the great Don Callis.
Good to be here.
Thank you so much for doing the podcast.
Yeah, man.
People always want to know where we are, what's the situation, what's it look like. We're in Don's palatial hotel room. He is just wearing jeans and a t-shirt. It's a very casual meeting between two friends here. We're going to have a good conversation. And he's in town for Impact Wrestling tapings. They're going to be happening.
Yeah, absolutely. We're here tomorrow night and the next night. And I love coming to Las Vegas for a bunch of reasons, one of which is I get to see you. Another of which is they have very liberal laws here regarding things that can make you relax during the evening.
That's right.
And that could be anything. I could be talking about anything here. I could be talking about people. I could be talking about things that grow in the ground. So, yeah, it's all good.
Wrestling people are the best with double entendre. Excellence. Let's get right into it. I think a lot of people that listen to the podcast are familiar with you, but let's just talk about how you got in the business. So many people that get into the wrestling business are legacy, but I don't think you are, right?
No, I got in. I was always a wrestling fan, and I got in. I trained in 1989, and it was like me and my buddy said we're going to try it. He didn't show up for the tryout. I did, and then I've been hooked since 1989 with a few breaks in between.
Where was this?
This was in Winnipeg.
Okay.
Like
our last guest. I'm from Winnipeg, you idiots.
Yeah,
that's
he made that line famous. So got trained, and it was kind of like weird. Like the first 3 years I was in the business, probably 2.5 years, I got a lot. I got a lot quickly in the business. Like I was made the top guy in Winnipeg in less than a year. They put the belt on me. I was getting offers in 1 year a year and a half in the business. I got offered to go to Japan. 2 years in the business, I got offered to go to Portland. But I just it was for me very much like it was a passion, but it was not, at that point I had not decided I wanted to make this my living.
Yeah.
So it's like when someone says move to Portland for a year, I'm like, I'm not moving to Portland. I don't know that I want to do this. It was just, I was good enough at it that I was getting the offers, but I really wasn't sure. It's funny, I was telling a friend of mine the other day, with all the success at various levels that I've had in pro wrestling, I always had something in the back of my head saying you shouldn't be doing this.
Yeah.
Up until I came back to the business in 2017, 2018, I always had that. And it always kind of made me think there's part of me, especially in the 90s, the way the business was so crazy.
Right.
I always felt like maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Maybe this is not me. Because there were things about the business back then that were definitely I was like, I don't like this, So it's kind of been weird. It's weird to be back, but it's such a different world now than it was when I left it, because I was gone for 13 years,
There's so much to unpack about what you just said there. First off, were you a tough guy growing up then? You're a big guy. You're about 6'2", I believe.
6'2". When I went to WWF in 97, I think I was about 210, 215 pounds. And I told someone today, I was considered too skinny to be a wrestler. Now, at 6'2", 215, I would be Seth Rollins.
Right.
That's the size of the guys now. You'd be considered big. So it was just different. Growing up, I just loved wrestling. I was never a tough guy. I was a Golden Gloves boxer until I was 14. I was okay, but then my eyes went. I have glasses, so that was the end of that. Played a lot of sports, none of them overly well, but I always liked showing off. And that was the thing is I was on the basketball team. I hardly ever played, but man, my warm up was great. I was like behind the back. And I just like showing off for the girls and for everybody. And so it was like wrestling was perfect for me. And then in university, I got into the theater program.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like, okay, I like athletics. It's not that I'm great at I wasn't great at basketball or football, but I could play. I could make the varsity team, but I wasn't going to be a star. But I'm like, I like showing off and I like doing theater. So wrestling was kind of like, I remember hearing Jesse Ventura say, like, for him, wrestling was the athletics and the entertainment together. He could do both. And that, for me, was very much like kind of like what it was,
I get it. You wanted to entertain people in an athletic kind of way, since, that's kind of where you came from. But growing up, so I was a big fan of the Von Erichs growing up.
Oh, my God.
I didn't...
The best.
Yeah, they were the best. We would go to the Sportatorium, and the Von Erichs were so insistent, and the Freebirds were, in any interview they did off camera, that it was real, that we just weren't sure. Like, we kind of knew that it was fake-ish or predetermined, sort of, but we didn't. When did you get smartened up, as they say?
I remember that a friend of my dad's, he had daughters, and I remember when I was like maybe 7 years old or 8 years old, they told me it was fake, and I was like flabbergasted. No way, because I grew up on the AWA and worshiping, Greg Gagne, Jim Brunzell, and I couldn't believe it. And I asked my dad, and my dad always told me the truth. So he said, well, yeah, it's sort of fake. And I was like, I couldn't believe it. And I guess I probably stopped watching it for a while after that. And then I kind of got back into it years later in high school, where I kind of didn't care that it was fake. I just liked that we got to go and have fun, right?
Yeah.
So my friends and I would go, we'd have a few beers and go have a little fun. And so it's weird, like my grandmother who grew, she raised her kids during the Great Depression, and she was the only one in the family who was a wrestling fan other than me. So it's kind of weird how things kind of shook out, if that makes sense for me.
Absolutely. Or a lot of the wrestlers talk about when they first go to training, they get, what do they call it, stretched out?
Stretched, big time.
Is that what happened when you first went? Did they or did they just talk right away? Like they do nowadays, they start you off by saying this is how you hit somebody without hitting them, right?
Yeah, it's different business now. I didn't get beat up that badly. The guy who trained me, Tony Canello, trained Roddy Piper, so he's a pretty legendary guy in Canada. I didn't get beat up that badly at all, but I mean, we paid a lot. Like, I mean, in terms of, I went on tours in northern Manitoba and northern Ontario that were, you had to love the business to get through that shit, because you were 20 hours on a friggin' road in the middle of the bush, over frozen lakes. There's no highways. Yeah. And it's like, then you'd get there, you'd wrestle 2 times usually on one show, and then you'd sleep on the floor of the gym, because it was a First Nation or an Indian reserve, they would probably call it down here, where you would, there were no hotels. So if you got through that, you paid a price and you loved the business. To me right now, the business is way too easy for guys to get into. And I think where it manifests itself is down the road. The guys don't have the knowledge, or they don't have necessarily the respect for the business that my era had. It's more accessible now, and I think that generally gets reported as being really good, and I think it's both good and bad.
Yeah, I hear you. It's positives and negatives. By the way, if you're listening and you're picking up, you're hearing some of the sounds in the background, we're at
Fabulous
Sam's
Town Casino and Resort.
I love this place because every few minutes they have like a dance break, like R-Truth and Carmella dance break, where the whole casino breaks out into songs. So you'll hear that a few times.
And there's like animatronic robot animals that come alive at night and scare the shit out of me if I'm drinking. Sorry, am I allowed to swear?
Yes.
Oh, good.
We try to keep it R-rated, but
very good.
You can swear on here for sure. So you are a guy with verbal skills. That's a good way to put it, right? And
I prefer to think of myself as a cunning linguist.
Thank you very much.
You like that?
There you go. Mature audiences only. So, but you're a verbal guy, and that the most successful wrestlers traditionally, I mean, this is really the knock that technical wrestlers like Chris Benoit end up not going as far as they can because they don't have verbal skills. Yeah. You, on the other hand, if anybody goes and looks up to your old stuff in the WWF, will see that, oh man, this guy was a master on the microphone. So how did they discover you and bring you in?
So I had been doing my thing on the indies for a while, and I'd work, like I kind of went, like I did Canadian indies, I was always on top, and then I started getting overseas booking. So I'd like go to South Africa for a month, I'd come back for a month, then I go to Germany for a month, I'd come back, then I go to Puerto Rico, come back. So it's kind of cool, like as a 26-year-old guy to be doing that and kind of living the lifestyle. But then my next thing was, okay, I'm giving myself 2 years to get to the WWF. In Canada, I had a big feud with Rick Martel, who was a famous wrestler.
Oh, yeah,
the
of
model.
course. He had the spray bottle.
He and I, we got together. Rick wanted to make a comeback to the WWF because he'd left for a couple of years, and he wanted me to be his tag team partner. So I came up with this idea that we'd be called the Supermodels, and then I changed my name to Don Casablancas just because I thought that was a very model kind of name. And then at the last minute, Rick ended up going to WCW, and he wanted me to go with him, and I didn't want to. I wanted to go to WWF. So Bret Hart ended up mending that fence, got me into WWF. I went there, as I said, at like 215 pounds, 6'2"-ish, and they're like, yeah, maybe you're too small. Because I mean, back then, like the guys were massive.
Right.
Regular to see guys over 300 pounds. So they put me in a group with a 7-foot giant and two guys that were 6'6" and 280, which made me look even smaller. And they said, well, you're going to be a manager, which basically means talking. And so I just started doing that. And it was like, I really resisted it because like I'm an athlete, I want to wrestle. And then after about 2 months of getting paid the same money as my guys were to not take bumps, I'm like, what the hell am I doing?
Yeah, this sounds great.
And I joked that like in ECW, where I went after I left WWF, I always joke with Jericho that I got paid $300,000 per bump because based on my salary, I would take like one bump a year because I then took it even one step further and went, okay, I should never take a bump except maybe once a year because people should have to pay to see it. And I defended that with ECW, and luckily Paul Heyman, who ran ECW, obviously owned it, created it. Paul Heyman was a former manager. So when I'm telling him, Paul, I have all kinds of heat, guys should not get to me,
right.
Paul understood that very well, and he understood that was right. So yeah, it was like, and then in WWF, I was lucky enough, I'd done color commentary in Winnipeg before. In WWF, I got to work with Jim Ross a little bit, learned a lot there. And then in ECW, Paul needed someone to call the pay-per-views with Joey Styles, and he offered me that gig. And if you go back, some of the work Joey and I've had a lot of great partners. Joey and I had magic together, and it was, I was the first commentator to use the word kayfabe on a worldwide pay-per-view broadcast. We got very inside baseball because that was where I saw the business going. Yeah. This is long before kind of like what we see now with awesome talent like the Young Bucks and stuff, and the nudge wink wink of stuff. I was doing that on commentary in 2000, 2001 with Joey. So we were way ahead of the curve. And actually, a lot of people don't know the story that when Eric Bischoff had a group, George Steinbrenner among them, a group called Fusient that was going to buy WCW and compete with Vince in 2001. His first call was to Joey Styles and I. We were going to be the commentary team on the new Nitro. And then that deal fell apart based on Time Warner, so I never ended up getting to go there. And it's funny how the wrestling business works because, and it was an eye-opener for me. I knew I had this offer on the table. It was going to be more money than I ever made. It was going to be for Bischoff and WCW. Yeah. And I was in Winnipeg in an area called Tuxedo, which Jericho would know. Most famous area, beautiful area in Winnipeg. And I was looking at houses because I'm going to buy a house, Yeah. And then that afternoon, I got the call that the deal had fallen through. And the business had gone from 3 companies where we could play them all off against each other to 1 company. And I went, monopolies usually don't work out well for the employees. Yeah. And I'm like, man, this sucks. I mean, because I remember saying to someone, they're like, how hard is it to be a wrestler? And I said, well, imagine you're in law school, wherever, and you know that when you get out of law school, there are only 3 or 4 firms in the world that are hiring, and they only hire about 60 guys, 50 lawyers. What are your odds? That's the wrestling business in the 90s, right? Yeah. And then it went to 1 company. Yeah. And it's like, okay, for guys like Jericho, monopoly doesn't matter because he's at the top of the food chain. But for guys like me who had been able to leverage 1 company off against another, it became a very challenging environment. And I just went like, I had been burned by wrestling twice. I got fired by WWE 10 days before Christmas for bullshit reasons.
Whoa, let me stop you right there.
Yeah.
According to your Wikipedia page, which is not often right, those reasons were that you upstaged the talent.
Well, Wikipedia is funny. I mean, I was told many things. The real reason I probably shouldn't talk about, but it was a personal issue with someone at a very high level, which was total bullshit, and which I was never given the opportunity to say my side of it. One thing I will say, like, I've always known how to get myself over, and I've always known how to keep myself over, which is the key to wrestling.
Yeah.
They threw me in a group called the Truth Commission, which was a joke. It was a horrible gimmick. It was a fail. They'd already tried it and it failed. Now they give it to me. I somehow figured out a way to keep myself over through even with that shitty gimmick. And it was like, but the problem was the guys in my group had already failed in that gimmick. And the guys in my group, I was able to get over because of, my character development that I did, the Jackal character that I created. They didn't create it. And it was like, oh, this guy's getting over, but he's not getting his talent over. And it's like, they told me that when they fired me, and I said, it was Bruce Pritchard, no comment, but it was like, I remember Bruce goes like, you don't get your talent over. And I went, well, I guess it wasn't you that was teaching Kurgan how to throw punches at Penn State University before the matches and getting stiff to shit because he didn't know how to throw a punch. And God bless Kurgan, I love him.
Yeah.
But it was like, I'm like, your punches are terrible. Like, hit me, And I was letting this giant friggin' hit me in the face to try to get his punches to the point where it looked like he looked on camera like a giant. And it was like, I did everything I could to get Kurgan as over as I could. Forget everything else, rational self-interest. If my giant that I'm managing is not over, and I don't get to go on the road, and if he doesn't get to go on the road, I don't get to go on the road. If you don't get to go on the road, you don't make money.
Yeah.
And so that was complete, unadulterated horseshit. The great thing was that I ended up getting to go to ECW, where I had the best run of my career with Paul Heyman. I laughed because I was told on the phone call where I was fired 10 days before Christmas, I was told, Don, your problem is you go out there and get yourself over. And I said, I've only been in the business 7 or 8 years at that time. I said, but I'm pretty sure of one thing. If you're not over in this business, you are nowhere. So how can you sit here and tell me that my problem is I'm getting over? Isn't that what you want me to do? Like, shouldn't we want everyone in this card to be over on some level, right? And that's the thing. It's like now when I produce the guys in pre-tapes and in our show, it's like if I have 4 guys in a shot, I want all 4 guys to be doing something.
Sure.
Otherwise, well, what do we have these other 2 guys for? No one gives a shit. But that was all the kind of stuff that they tell you to mess with your head or whatever. I don't have any regrets about it because, frankly, I thought I'd have a job there for 30 years, and probably I would have been miserable living in Connecticut. And so I got to go to ECW at a time when ECW was going on national TV, and it was, a great experience. Paul Heyman let me go out there and do my thing. So that was super cool. And so, but you know what? We're all a product of what my dad used to say, it's not about what happens to you, it's about what you do about what happens to you. So you move on.
Let me give you the title of your book. If you're not over, it's over. If you're not over, it's over.
Yeah, that's right. And it's like, dude, I've taken that mentality. I mean, take it into a business meeting. You got to be over, or else you're not memorable, right?
Absolutely.
In a business meeting,
But
you're going to pitch something.
Adult videos as well.
Hey, man, I got you.
If you don't come up with something unique, if you're not over with the fans, then
right.
you just go on a two-site. And to your point, let me argue in favor of it here, because you get people say, well, Paul Heyman was the greatest manager of all time. Look at how he got Brock Lesnar over. Brock Lesnar is a lot better to work with than Kurgan. You have to have something to work with. Now, I go back to, let me just say real quickly, Gary Hart, my favorite manager of all time. He took guys who had nothing to say and weren't very good at their jobs. Kamala and King Kong Bundy, and Bundy could actually talk. But, he was the manager of monsters, and he got himself over. As did Skandar Akbar back from the day as well, and he if he hadn't have, they would have had no show. The Von Erichs would have had no one to go up against without a manager doing what you're saying needs to be done. Somebody's got to get over.
In the WWE, I mean, I remember I talked to Jim Cornette my first week on the job.
Yeah.
To me, the greatest manager of all time is Bobby Heenan, and I don't think it's close.
Okay. I would put that.
But I will say this. I went up to Jim Cornette, and he and I laugh about this to this day. And about a week on the job, I said, Mr. Cornette, they asked me to be a manager. I've never been a manager. I think I can talk, but I don't know how to be a manager. Could you give me some advice? And he goes, Don, don't even waste your time. They don't let managers get over here because they didn't let him get over. And he's arguably one of the greatest of all time. So I just went like that was the rap on WWF at the time was they don't like managers and they don't let managers get over very far. And so there was also that challenge. It's like, why are you over? You're a manager. And it's like, well, why do you have managers if you don't want them to get over? The point of a manager, if you're a manager and you're not over, you can't get your talent over.
Right.
That's the thing, you know. Other than referees, I think everyone should be over on some level.
I agree.
You know.
We as and I'll finish our wrestling discussion of your history at least by making this point. We as the fans, because I'm just average fan. I really don't watch that much wrestling. I'm here and there. I'm kind of the average guy that you got to pull in.
You're the guy everyone's chasing. You're the casual fan.
Because I drift away if you don't come up with something compelling to pull me back in. Yeah. We need somebody to hate. If you don't give us somebody to hate, then I don't care when the good guy comes in.
That's right.
And saves the day.
Yeah.
And that's why you need, if your wrestler doesn't have the personality to be hated, then you need a manager to come in and help him become hated.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And being a manager is a lost art in the business, and it's become a lot harder because there's way fewer guys now who can talk and draw money. So people will say to me, like over the years, like, oh, so-and-so is a really good promo. And I'll go, no, he's not a good promo. He's a good talker, and he has a personality, but he's not a good promo. It's kind of like the difference between taking a machine gun and just like blindfolding yourself, spinning around 10 times and firing it. It's like it's still a machine gun. It's still gunfire, but it's just everywhere. As opposed to a guy who's a sharpshooter who can pick off a target.
Right.
A good promo can get to the heart of the matter and can draw money. Guys who are good talkers, there's so many guys now who it's like they have personality and they're kind of engaging, but it's like there's no money in the promo. I'm not hating the person. I'm just going, oh, he's entertaining.
Right.
We had heels here. And I mean, Enzo Amore is a guy in WWE that I thought this about. No disrespect to him because I think, he's a talented kid, but it's like, he's got great personality. He's a great talker. His promos are not good because the promos don't make me hate him or love somebody else. They don't make me want to buy a ticket. If you look at the top 10, if you look at the top 5 promos or 10 promos in 1998 in the WWF when I was there, like take the top promo of today, doesn't make the top 10 from then. Because those guys, Steve Austin, The Rock, those guys knew how to draw money.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're going to talk about Impact Pro Wrestling, which is where you currently sit at the very top of that mountain. But first, I need to talk to you about our sponsors.
Yeah.
All right, everybody, let's talk about Blue Chew, BlueChew.com. Blue Chew brings you the first chewable erectile dysfunction pill with the same FDA-approved active ingredients as Viagra and Cialis. Take them anytime. Since they're chewable, they work up to twice as fast as a pill. I am an expert on this. I am a customer of these guys. I am a 50-year-old man who directs, produces adult videos, and sometimes even performs in adult videos, and I need a pill that is effective quickly. Blue Chew, it works. It's easy to get. It's wonderful. It'll solve a lot of your problems in terms of confidence and performance. It's prescribed online, shipped straight to your door in a discreet package. It doesn't, it's not something other people are going to recognize. You don't have to go in person to your doctor's office. You don't have to wait at the pharmacy. You just go online to their website and you fill in a little box that says, hey, I have erectile dysfunction problems. A doctor reviews it, writes you a legitimate prescription, and it is shipped right to your home. Made in the United States, and since they prepare and ship direct, they're cheaper than a pharmacy. So let me make this a no-brainer for you, as I like to say. This is pretty darn simple. Try it out for free. That's what I said. Try it out for free. Use my promo code ADULT, ADULT, and you can get your first order for free of these wonderful erectile dysfunction pills. All you got to do is pay $5 shipping. So again, you're going to go to bluechew.com. That's BLUECHEW.com. Use the promo code ADULT, ADULT. Get it for free. Try it out, and then thank me. Go online. Go on Twitter somewhere. Find me. I'm Glenn King XXX on Twitter with 2 N's. So find me and say thank you so much, because this works. You rock. All right, let's talk to Don about Impact Wrestling. Impact Wrestling is fascinating. It has been the number 2 organization in the business at times. You could argue that right now it is the number 3 organization. Mm-hmm. I would argue, I would suspect, maybe you're going to correct me on this, but you're in a sweet spot right now because AEW is going to go on TNT in a few weeks here. They're going to get bonzo ratings out of the gate. Yeah. All of a sudden, these TV companies are going to be going, where else can we find an alternative to WWE and to AEW? You've been sitting on this for months, waiting for the right opportunity to come along. Yeah. Is this correct? Is that what you're doing?
I think we've taken the approach of no matter what's happening around us, we're going to produce the best weekly wrestling show we can. And Dave Meltzer said a little while ago in one of his podcasts that, Impact is so much better than WWE's show. We don't have the resources. We don't have a 100-person roster. But I think our show is very cutting edge. I think we're doing things that no one else is doing. And I think we have shown, people talk about talent leaving, and it's like, they don't understand the business side of it. A lot of the talent that leaves, I'm okay with them leaving because it's like, okay, so-and-so has been great for us, but time to move on. What we've gotten very good at, and it's one of the best skills you can have in wrestling, is making new people.
Right.
So if you leave, that's fine. Boom, next man up, I'll make somebody else. We've done that. We're doing that now with a kid named Ace Austin, who I told you about. We're trying to turn him into one of the like a lost Von Erich,
Beautiful.
A rock star.
Right.
And it's like doing stuff like that. And to me, as a creative person, as you can appreciate, that's the cool thing. If you bring in Chris Jericho here, I'll be happy to have Chris here, and I'll be happy to work with him. But he's already Chris Jericho.
Right.
For me, creatively, what am I doing, right? But if you tell me, well, Chris Jericho left, well, now we have to try to make a new Chris Jericho, that's a challenge for me that I can really sink my teeth into. So that's been cool, and we've gotten really good at that because we've had to, because what happens is we make people and then they come and steal them from us.
Well, look, somebody asked me on my Curious Cat the other day if this upsets me, that because this, I make female domination videos for a living.
Yes.
And I keep on developing talent that then goes and works for other websites and other producers, and they, these people get the benefit of me discovering talent. And somebody said, doesn't that upset you? And what do you do to stop it? And I said, are you kidding me? I take pride. I'm so proud of all of the performers that I gave their starts in this particular genre, and that I discovered them and helped them flourish. And don't worry about it. I'll find the next person out there that, I can pick the next talent. You developed some pretty awesome talent. Who are the ones that you're most proud of developing then?
We've done a lot with a whole bunch of folks. You look at where Taya Valkyrie is right now. She's a top female heel in the business. Tessa Blanchard is a huge star right now for us. Sami Callihan has been great. Eddie Edwards we took from a guy who very much been a guy who was considered a great technical wrestler, but maybe not that interesting as a character, and we took him and gave him a whole new character, which I think he's arguably the most over guy on our roster, which has been really cool. We as a creative team, and that's me and Jimmy Jacobs and Scott D'Amore and Tommy Dreamer and now Robert Evans.
Evans, good.
Hell of a team.
Okay. You're putting them over because Jimmy's now walked into the room?
Yeah. These are all my ideas before he got in here. I think what we do is, rather than necessarily discover, we I think you take that raw talent and then you turn it into something that's better. And I think we've become, as I said before, through necessity, because people steal talent, people will overpay to get them away from you. We've become very good at doing that. And that's actually kind of the exciting thing. I mean, I'd love to have The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin and Chris Jericho on our roster and you still come up with stuff. But it's like, that only pushes you creatively so far. You know, if I have to make something that's not necessarily there and we have to work on that, that's to me super satisfying, right? And the talent, by the way, when you help them with that, they're so appreciative, which is nice, because at the end of the day, it's like, you know, money's great, but I think if you're a creative person, you're not being creatively fulfilled, you know, then you're really probably not all that happy.
You didn't say, because she's gone, but I want you to take credit for Scarlett Bordeaux. Go ahead.
Well, I don't know if I'd take credit for Scarlett.
You nurtured her. You helped her
let's
come
be
up with
careful.
this gimmick.
My Jimmy's laughing over there. My thing with Scarlett was I frankly, I mean, I don't mean this in a demeaning way. I had no idea who she was. And she was recommended to someone that, you know, I should meet with and have a look at. We brought her in. And I'm someone, again, I was in the time capsule. I was out of the business for 13 years. So I left at the height of the Attitude Era. And now I come back. I look at the TV shows. Everything's sanitized. The women are covered up. You know, the men look different. It's like, I almost got the impression, and I'm not saying this is some conscious decision. You almost get the impression it's like someone decided, like, men and women can't be sexy anymore because someone will get offended. And I just went like, man, like, and I mean, I came up in ECW, I trained a little bit under Paul Heyman. It's like, we need to do things that are different than what other people are doing. I'm like, everyone's got this sanitized, non-sexual version of people. The reality is, as you know very well, we're all sexual people, right?
Yeah.
And why should we be ashamed of the fact that, hey, we like things that are sexual or that are erotic or that are really nice or full of love or whatever. So it's like, I saw Scarlett and she was very game for it. It's like, she looked like, I'm like, I want to make you the Marilyn Monroe of pro wrestling. I want to, and I gave her the line, I want you to bring sexy back to pro wrestling, because it was gone. And she famously, you know, came out on a stage in Toronto and just blew everyone away. And I, you know, she and I would talk about it, and I said, you know, we're going to get heat over this. Not her. We're going to get heat over it. And I said, for that reason, and not only for that reason, but I'm like, we have to not be afraid that, because we knew where this was going. It was like, you're not going to wrestle for 6 months, and we're going to make this a huge deal when you finally wrestle. And we held off on it. As a small company, that's a hard thing to do, because you want your talent out there on the field. But she was very good at the gimmick, and she wasn't afraid. But my thing was, it's like, to me, if I put someone out there, if we put her out there and she's just that, she's just a sexual character or a Marilyn Monroe, well, that's about as creatively vacant as what they were doing on TV, where they're desexualizing everyone. But I'm like, we want her to be smart, and we want her to be powerful. We want her to be savvy and intuitive. And she became all that as a character, and, you know, actually, like, not manipulated people, but, like, you know, she managed relationships and she got things exactly the way she wanted them as a character. And, you know, I knew she was over when we would get Scarlett chants on shows she had not appeared on yet. They just wanted to see her. So yeah, I mean, did we all have a role in that? Of course. I mean, you know, as a coach, you draw up the play, but the player has to run the play. So it really is a kind of a collaborative effort.
I've been making a living for 20 years by making videos of women who have the it factor. They have something about them that shows confidence, and that they get put on a pedestal. And you see, there you go. There's the thing that's common for both wrestling and porn.
I just thought of a great reality show.
Okay.
You and I, we call it Trading Places.
Yes.
You go book the territory with Jimmy Jacobs here,
Yeah.
and I'll do your job for a few months.
I will have women coming out to the ring with, like, another girl on a dog leash.
Jimmy's like, I've been wanting to book that all year.
Be good stuff, I'm telling you guys. All right, before we get into the stuff we really want to talk about, I got to give you your opportunity to promote your shows that are going to be coming up that we're taping now, that are going to be coming out right about the time the podcast
Yeah,
comes
man.
out.
I mean, I guess I would say the big one's Bound for Glory, which is October 20th at the Odeum in fabulous Chicago, one of the best wrestling markets in the world. A lot of cool stuff happening there. Brian Cage defending the title finally because he's been hurt so much against Sami Callihan, who's a disgusting individual, as we know. And the man that I was out with today and you and I ran into in the lobby, Ken Shamrock, will be fighting Moose. 6'6", 300-pound former NFL player. Going to be fantastic. Lots of other great matches on this show. Encourage people to check it out. Follow us on Twitter. And check out Impact Wrestling, because if you're not, you're missing out on, in my opinion, the best wrestling show on TV.
I agree. I've watched the show many times. I believe it is the greatest wrestling show on TV. And I want to ask you about, of course, your big announcement. You have huge news regarding the Impact television show, but first we need to talk about our other sponsors, Sex Panther and Savage Sin Clothing. Let's talk about Sex Panther. Sex Panther is SEXTPANTHER.com, SexPanther.com. Sex Panther is the way that you can establish a real relationship with many of the people that have been on my show. If you're a regular listener of the show, you have heard many adult film stars on the show and you've fallen in love with them. You've said, I really want to get to know that person. The way you can do it is at Sex Panther. Sex Panther enables you to talk on the phone with your favorite performer. Sex Panther enables you to exchange texts. It also lets you send videos and pictures and lets her or him or whoever you're talking to send videos, pictures, talk to you on the phone as well. It's pretty awesome. It's a lot better than the old days when you had to just kind of wonder what somebody was like. This is your way of getting to know your favorite performer and also to support your favorite performer. And if you're a performer who listens to the show, which I know quite a few performers do listen to the show, entertainers of all kind now, Sex Panther is not just limited to adult, but Sex Panther is a great way for you to establish a real bond with your fans. Don't just, talk to your fans from afar. This way you can actually speak to your fans. You can text with your fans, etc. And you can charge a fee for this, so you can separate the non-supporting fans, non-paying fans from the paying fans. So whether you're a performer or whether you're a fan, check out sextpanther.com today. That's SEXTPANTHER.com. Let's talk about Savage Sin Clothing. I love Savage Sin Clothing. You will too. Check it out at SavageSinClothing.com. That's SAVAGESIN Clothing.com. Why do I love Savage Sin Clothing? Because I seriously need help picking out clothing. I want to look cool, but I just don't know how to look cool anymore. And the place that I go is SavageSin.com to do so. Now, you got to go check out their website. If you've looked at this before, it's time for you to go back and check it out because they just redid their site. Very cool. It says, "Are you savage enough?" on the front of the page here, and then you go in and it talks about in the About Us section. I love these pictures. Savage Sin, created from the collision of two worlds, MMA and XXX. We get real, raw, and wild with our range of unique apparel, including men's and women's clothing, accessories, and more. Instead of offering you the same cookie-cutter, dull products, we go the distance, giving you the most savage and sinful lifestyle choices. I think that says it all right there. So if you want to look cool, if you want to find great clothing that you can wear at the mall or wear to the gym or wear out or wear anywhere and feel like I'm contemporary, you need to go to Savage Sin Clothing and check it out. And again, let me make this a no-brainer. Like, dude, don't miss out on this sale before it's too late. You can use the promo code KINGSIN, that's KINGSIN. You are not only going to get free shipping, I can't even believe I'm saying this. You're going to get 40% off on your order. 40%. That's almost half. So get in there. Take advantage of this offer. SavageSinClothing.com. All right, so from this point forward in the podcast, it's going to sound a little different, and here's why. The first part of this podcast was done in Don Callis' hotel room as he was in town to do wrestling shows at Sam's Town here in Las Vegas. And I asked him about his television show and where to watch and so on, and he was just giddy with excitement. He hinted, he teased, he told me about this great announcement that's coming, but he couldn't really reveal any details at the time. And since the time that we taped the podcast and now, he has made that big announcement. So instead of using what we had from then, I just called Don on the phone and we did the rest of the podcast on the phone. There's some good stuff in the rest of the podcast. It's worth listening to. There is a reason that I don't like to do podcasts over the phone. Sometimes you get crackly noise and sound. Sometimes you can't hear each other, so you don't answer the question exactly. I think podcasts are better in person, but this is definitely worth listening to because you do want to find out about the excitement involving Impact's new television deal. What's your huge announcement? Go ahead and release it to the world, even though the world already knows.
So the parent company of Impact Wrestling, Anthem Sports Entertainment, it was announced this week, has purchased a majority stake in Access TV and HDNet Movies. We'll be partnering up with, among others, Mark Cuban, Steve Harvey, and AEG. So it's a huge move for us. Access has had a great track record for entertainment and also for sports programming, including wrestling. So it's going to be, I think, a great place for people to find Impact Wrestling that have been wanting to see us on a larger platform, and that now we finally have that.
Oh, that's fantastic news! Congratulations. So that's AXS TV for all you folks that are listening. Just go to your local cable provider or whatever and look up AXS. So what does that mean exactly to you? Can you share yet? Do you know the nights you're going to be on? Our show is going to be? What changes are going to be made?
The night hasn't been, excuse me, just choking on some coffee. The night has not been decided yet, or I guess rather more to the point, hasn't been released yet. So we'll sit on that for a bit. But suffice to say, I think people who have been saying, I keep hearing great things about Impact Wrestling, but I can't find it. Those people will now be able to watch our show, because it's been, the last few months, we've made a big push into digital. We've made some real headway with digital. But not everyone was able to access the show from the traditional, TV, linear television platform, and now they will be able to. So it's pretty cool. Pretty pumped.
Well, that brings me to a question that Jim Williams, who is the host of the Stream On podcast, asked me to ask you, which is, does Access TV plan to have a streaming option that goes like directly to Roku and Amazon Fire and all those? You know what I'm talking about?
I think it's literally as we're recording this. Yes, as we're recording this, I think we're 2 days out from the initial announcement. So there's still a lot of things that we're taking a look at everything and figuring those things out. You will still be able to see us on the Twitch platform, where we've been very successful for the last number of months. And a lot of people who kind of prefer to, perhaps for convenience or other reasons, kind of access our show on digital have been doing so with some success on Twitch. So that's been pretty fun.
Well, so talk to me about what goes into producing a weekly television show now then. I think the folks at AEW are about to find out, right, that there's a lot of chat that go into it, and it's different than just doing pay-per-views.
Yeah, I mean, I would call kind of just doing pay-per-views kind of big show booking, and that's similar to kind of how New Japan gets booked. I mean, it's all booked. It's booked a lot less around a weekly television show and a lot more around what are we building towards for our next big show. ECW was a bit like that when I was there. Frankly, that's a much easier way to book a show. We are a 2-hour weekly episodic television show, much like a soap opera. So the storylines continue week to week, and there's story arcs that go on sometimes for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, depending. And that's an onerous task. I had my eyes open when I came into this, and we have a writing team, myself and 1, 2, 3, 4 other guys, and it isn't in any creative process. There's no instruction manual for it. It just kind of comes. So we have we'll sit there and we hole up in a house in Ontario, and we're working sometimes 18, 20 hours a day. And it's a creative process. So sometimes you go for a swim in the pool, you have a beer, you take a dinner break, you come back, you come up with an idea over dinner. It's a very kind of a evergreen kind of process, but yeah, like everything's storyboarded out. You're coming up with the ideas. Now the technical stuff of, okay, how many segments in the show? Where do we want to put, so-and-so segment in the context? Do we want it to open the show, end the show, be a part of a crossover? So it's much more complicated than what I had remembered. I hadn't done a lot of TV writing since ECW, and that was a very different animal. So it is a full-time task. And then once you've got that script, you've got to coordinate with the talent on the ground and kind of sit and talk to them and say, hey, here's what your segment is. Here's what we're looking for. A lot of times, like I've written a segment specifically for someone. So, you want to see your vision acted out properly. So a lot of times, you might be producing the same segment you wrote, and, you might have to stop someone and say like, no, that's not what this is. This is what this is. So it's ultimately very fulfilling to see your ideas get translated onto the screen and to see the young people that work for us in a position to be able to deliver on it.
It was a thrill. I was backstage, of course, with you at the show the other night, and I got to see you giving out some of the instructions, and it was surreal. Let me make this analogy here. I think is interesting because you and I are both 70s and 80s TV show guys. Mm-hmm. So Dallas, the television show, I remember reading an article at one point talking about how they like doing season-long builds with payoffs at the end, but they discovered that they could syndication if they made each episode more of a standalone episode with a beginning and an ending to a story arc and a payoff at the end, because that's what fans wanted to see when they're just watching a random show, is a happy ending at the end of each show. Do you feel that pressure at times to want to build up? Stories can take 8 weeks, is what you just said, but at the same time, people want to see a happy ending at the end of every show. How do you balance that?
People, sometimes you get very quick feedback on social media, and you say, people are like, why hasn't this person gotten their retribution yet? It's like, man, like, you don't get everything in the same episode, and it's called building, it's called a good story, and so, but that's the world we live in now. Everyone wants everything yesterday. And so for me, I'm just kind of looking at it and going, you know what, I'm just going to kind of hold off, and we're going to do this the right way. And if we're telling the story the way we should be, then people will stick with it. And Dallas is a great example of a show that I think I've used many times as an analogy with wrestling, because it's like, what better heel was there than J.R. Ewing?
Right.
What better baby face was there than Bobby Ewing? Bobby Ewing never lost a fist fight, and he was, if you want to use a Dallas comparison, I mean, he was Kerry Von Erich. He was the pristine baby face, and J.R. Ewing is the ultimate heel, and some of the other characters on that show, it was really like booked like a great wrestling show. Who shot JR? That should have been a pay-per-view. They'd have made $1 billion off of it, so there's lessons to be learned from how some of those, or maybe they took some of their lessons from wrestling back then. I don't know, but there's lots to learn.
You know what is the bigger lesson, or the more interesting correlation there? So the first 5-6 years of the show, they always had motivations. JR did what he does of his love of his family and whatever, and they always kind of explained why he was such an evil villain. And then they kind of gave up on that, and they suddenly had him flipping back and forth between being a heel and a face, and his stuff didn't make sense anymore. And then that's when the show went down the tubes. I guess it must be the same in wrestling, where you have to at least establish the motivation for the heel.
Yeah, I mean, they were a little all over the place, but I mean, I think in today's wrestling, it's been it has very much been a situation where people will tell you that there's no room for heels in the business anymore, and there's no heels and baby faces, and it's very much gotten to kind of a bit like Cirque du Soleil, where you don't go to see Cirque du Soleil for one particular performer. I couldn't name you one Cirque du Soleil performer. You go for the brand of Cirque du Soleil. It's sort of a little bit what Vince has done with WWE. WWE is the draw, not John Cena, or not that John Cena is not a draw, but it's like we don't want one performer to have that kind of power. And now too, it's like wrestling has become almost like Cirque du Soleil from the perspective of we're there to applaud a good performance rather than hate the heel or love the babyface. I think applauding a performance is nice, but I also think that I always say it's the difference between this. Like, so I'm a football fan, and my team is the Minnesota Vikings. If I watch a Minnesota Vikings playoff game, I'm living and dying with everything that happens, and I am fully invested emotionally and otherwise in what's happening. But if the New England Patriots are playing the Cleveland Browns in the playoff game, I'll watch the game and I might go, wow, that was a great play. Wow, that was a good game. Cool. But I'm not invested in it. So it's a very different viewing experience. And for me, that's the difference between performance-based wrestling and storyline heel and babyface-based wrestling. Now, the heel and babyface stuff is harder to do because it is hard to get people. It's not hard to have two guys who are athletic go in there and do some moves that people will react to. That happens all the time. It happens in big companies. It happens on indies. What is hard is to get someone to actually suspend their disbelief, and that's the business we're in ultimately. And when you can do that, you do well.
I couldn't agree more. Average fan speaking here. I need somebody to hate and I need somebody to love. Well, what about, you had to have had some disastrous things happen in the making of your shows?
I think, you learn to adjust. And so, you have things like injuries. I mean, Brian Cage, who's currently our world champion, after a 4-month build, he won the title on April 28th in Toronto at our Rebellion show. And, he blew out his back in the match. And he gutted it out. He finished the match, but he could hardly walk afterwards. And he's effectively been off for over 3 months. I mean, he's wrestled one other match for us, and re-injured himself during that process. So whatever you had planned for him as world champion is now out the window because you don't have him. So we had to make a very quick decision. What do? Do you strip him of the title? We didn't know how long he was going to be off, And so, we used his injury to get someone else over. We rubbed him up against Michael Elgin, and we gave Michael Elgin the credit for putting him on the shelf, which helped Mike. And then when they came back and wrestled in Dallas at Slammiversary at our pay-per-view in July, there was a lot of heat for that match. And Brian did a great job, but unfortunately aggravated his injury. So, injuries can play a role. Sometimes, you have a character that ends up leaving for whatever reason, and it's like, okay, we don't have that person, so what do? Well, in wrestling, what we do is we make new people. So, and that's kind of the fun part, right? Is it's fun promoting someone who's already over, but it's a lot more fun to build a new person and say, I'm going to make this guy my next whatever, right?
Yeah, next man up, right? Absolutely.
That's it. Exactly.
What about, and this will lead me into the last thing I want to ask you about, wardrobe malfunctions. Have you had any of the exciting things where the nipples pop out? I
have not seen that. I know I once saw someone throw up in the ring. That was charming.
Okay.
And, I have heard stories about people, wrestling overseas who, picked up a bug or whatever and may have had some bathroom issues in the ring, which is a horrifying thought. But yeah, I haven't really seen a wardrobe malfunction, thankfully, because I would probably be pretty embarrassed if I saw that.
Yeah. I mean, I think, there's so many great stories I've heard, but the one about Kerry Von Erich's prosthetic foot falling off in the match, I think you've probably heard that story. Like, that would be a tough
I always wonder with stories like that, how much of it is kind of wrestling legend that kind of, it got passed from one person to another and et cetera. But the wrestling business is full of great stories of, especially back in the 70s and 80s, when the business was very different. And the guys were a little crazier. I think back then it was the Wild West compared to now. It's a lot more corporate and controlled,
Hey, man, I edit that stuff out of my things. People ask me all the time about what went wrong on set, whatever, and I tell them nothing. I edit it all out. So as far as you know, nothing ever goes wrong on set.
That's right. It's
Let
always
me finish
perfect.
this off by exactly. So this is Mature Audiences Mayhem at the roster on my screen right now, and I was at the matches the other night. So I was so impressed with what you've done in terms of getting some amazing talent in there. And from my perspective, where I'm sort of judging on the combination of wrestling abilities and also sexuality or sexiness, I love Katie Forbes and Kiera Hogan. Talk to me about your women's roster, women's division.
The knockouts division is the best it's ever been, in my opinion. You talk about Taya, who's the longest reigning knockouts champion of all time.
Beautiful,
Madison
talented.
Rain, 15-time knockout champion. Rosemary, Sue Young, Jordan Grace. I mean, these are all incredibly athletic, hard wrestling, hard working women. And, the great thing about the locker room is not just the talent level, but the camaraderie. It's not uncommon to see like a group of people like impromptu rapping or singing or something like that backstage and just having fun. We're in California a while ago and there was a basketball hoop up back, and kind of by the middle of the day, everyone was waiting to play one-on-one or horse, play basketball with each other. So it's and I've never seen that in a wrestling locker room, that level of camaraderie. So I think we're very fortunate that we've got both good athletes and good performers and just real good people too.
Where do you draw the line about when a thing becomes too sexual? Like, I know you're not ready for my girl on a doggy leash or stink face match or any of my ideas yet, but where do you sort of put the line?
I think ultimately it's like it just has to be, kind of a respectful thing where it's, obviously there's common sense and good taste, and then there's also broadcast standards and things of that nature. I think that, with our male talent or our female talent, like, they're all way too talented to kind of go like, let's make this about the fact that, Joe Smith is a really hot looking guy and let's portray him only as a hot looking guy. I think, because Joe Smith might be a great wrestler too. So why are we only saying he's really great looking? We got to promote the whole package. I don't think that there's obviously, people have different comfort levels with kind of how they look. Some guys like to have long hair. Some guys like to wear a singlet. I mean, it's kind of whatever people are comfortable with. And it's, I think, just like I wouldn't want to solely focus on someone's, technical wrestling ability and have that be the only thing. It's like you also want to talk about their ability to talk or their ability to be a showman. So I think it really is kind of like it's never one thing with a good performer. It's always, they have a little bit of everything.
Was it a tough decision for you to put women in the Battle Royale the other night? Is that something new, or you've been doing that?
We've started kind of pushing that envelope a bit. Intergender wrestling is popular with a lot of fans. We don't like to do too much of it, partially because Tessa Blanchard is, now kind of a regular performer in the men's division, and I almost don't like the term intergender wrestling, even though it's what it is. I look and go like, honestly, like, and I'm not going to mention all of the knockouts, but like, Tessa has proven she can compete with men on an equal or better footing. I mean, Tessa is not just one of the better knockouts that's ever been here. She's one of the better wrestlers who's ever been here.
Right.
Taya, Jordan Grace, they could also both, I think, very successfully compete against the men. But it's like everything, you don't want to have, steak and a baked potato every single night for every meal. So you got to have some variety. So it's like, I don't want to have every match be intergender, but sometimes with a thing like a battle royal, it's kind of a cool way to give people a little taste. But it's like anything. If I gave people cage matches every night, they would probably look at it and go like, okay, enough of the cage matches. Can we have a 60-minute Ironman match, or can we have a regular 10-minute match? Like, you got to give people some variety and not focus on any kind of one thing. So very important not to kind of overdo something like that. But I think we've been pretty smart about it.
Well, look, if you want some ideas, I do film wrestling matches for my videos every once in a while.
Maybe we'll make you a recurring wrestling character. You never know.
There you go. I'm down for it. I'm totally down.
All right, man.
All right. You've
Cool.
been so generous in giving us your time. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast here. Your social where people can find you and check you out.
At Cyrus Overhuge on Twitter, and yeah, I'm on there when I'm not on an airplane, and sometimes I even respond to the fans. So it's kind of fun for me.
There you go, everybody. The great Don Callis. Thank you so much.
Thanks, buddy.